When 28-year-old Maya Chen was deliberately excluded from her wealthy grandmother's will for choosing love over family expectations, she discovers her traditional Chinese-American grandmother had been secretly supporting Maya's art career and interracial marriage for years. A hidden safe deposit box reveals a stunning truth about acceptance, sacrifice, and a grandmother's unconditional love that changes everything Maya thought she knew about family loyalty. Maya Chen sat in the back row of the mahogany-paneled law office, her husband Jake's warm hand covering her trembling fingers. At 28, she'd expected this moment since marrying Jake 3 years ago, the day her traditional, Chinese-American family would make their disapproval official. Attorney Patricia Weiss adjusted her glasses and began reading Eleanor Chen's last will and testament. Maya's grandmother had built a small fortune through her Charleston import business, bringing authentic Asian goods to the South for over 40 years. To my grandson Michael Chen, I leave my business and primary residence, valued at $1.2 million, trusting he will honor our family traditions. Maya's cousin Michael, 32 and perfectly groomed in his expensive suit, nodded solemnly. He'd always been the golden child, Harvard MBA, married to a Chinese-American doctor, 2 children who spoke Mandarin fluently. To my granddaughter, Jennifer Chunwang, I leave my investment portfolio, valued at $800,000, knowing she will provide wisely for her family. Jennifer, Michael's younger sister, dabbed her eyes with a lace handkerchief. She'd followed the prescribed path to law school, marriage within the community, a house in the right neighborhood. Maya felt Jake's hand squeezed hers as the attorney continued through smaller bequests to other relatives and longtime employees. Her name remained absent from each bequest. And finally, Patricia cleared her throat and looked directly at Maya. To my granddaughter, Maya Chun Harrison, who chose her heart over her heritage, I leave nothing from my estate, as she has already chosen to leave her family behind. The silence in the room was deafening. Maya felt heat rise to her cheeks as family members shifted in their chairs, some looking embarrassed, others nodding in approval. Her Aunt Susan, Michael and Jennifer's mother, wore a satisfied expression that barely concealed her triumph. However, Patricia continued, Eleanor Chen did leave a sealed letter specifically for Maya. Maya's legs felt unsteady as she walked to the front of the room to accept the envelope. The paper was thick, expensive, and bore her grandmother's precise handwriting. For Maya, my stubborn granddaughter. She returned to her seat, the letter burning in her hands. Jake whispered, we don't need their money. We have each other. But it wasn't about the money. It was about being erased from her family's history, about her grandmother's final rejection of the life Maya had chosen. When she'd married Jake, a kind, hard-working contractor who happened to be white, her grandmother had stopped taking her calls. Their last conversation, 2 years ago, had ended with harsh words about betraying the family legacy. As relatives filed out, offering stiff condolences to Michael and Jennifer while avoiding eye contact with Maya, her cousin Michael approached. Maya, I'm sorry it came to this, he said quietly. You know how traditional Nai was. She just couldn't understand your choices. My choices? Maya's voice carried years of hurt. You mean choosing to marry someone I loved? You knew what would happen when you married outside the culture, Aunt Susan interrupted, joining them. Eleanor sacrificed everything to build this family's standing in the community. She expected her grandchildren to honor that. I honored her by trying to live a good life, Maya replied, her voice stronger now. By working hard, by treating people with respect, by filing away everything she taught you about family loyalty, Susan snapped. By embarrassing us all with your choices. Jake stepped closer to Maya, his protective presence steadying her. I think we should go, he said softly. In the parking lot, Maya finally opened the letter. Her grandmother's spidery handwriting filled 2 pages. My stubborn Maya. If you are reading this, then you have heard my will and you are angry. Good anger means you still care about family. Even when family disappoints you. I could not leave you money in my will because they would never understand, but I have left you something more valuable, proof that I never stopped believing in you. Even when I couldn't say so. Go to First National Bank on King Street, safety deposit box 247. The key is taped under the bottom drawer of my jewelry box, which I have asked Patricia to give to you. You were always the bravest of my grandchildren, Maya. I hope someday you can forgive a stubborn old woman for not being brave enough while she was alive. With more love than I could ever show. Maya's hands shook as she folded the letter. Jake read over her shoulder, his eyes wide with confusion and hope. "What do you think is in the safety deposit box?" he asked. "I don't know," Maya whispered. "But I'm scared to find out." That evening in their small apartment above Jake's contracting office, Maya sat staring at her grandmother's jewelry box and intricately carved wooden chest that had been delivered by the attorney's courier. It was the only thing her grandmother had officially left her, and Maya had expected it to be empty. A final insult. Instead, it contained her grandmother's jade bracelet, the one Maya had admired as a child, and a small key taped exactly where the letter had indicated. "Are you going to the bank tomorrow?" Jake asked, settling beside her on their worn couch. "I think I have to," Maya replied, fingering the jade bracelet that felt warm against her skin. "But Jake, what if it's just more disappointment? What if this is some final test that I'm going to fail to, then we face it together?" Jake said simply, "Like we always do." As Maya drifted off to sleep that night, she wondered what her grandmother could have hidden that was more valuable than money. Part of her hoped for reconciliation, for proof that she'd been loved despite everything. But a larger part of her braced for one final rejection from the woman who had helped raise her but ultimately couldn't accept the life she'd chosen. The jade bracelet sat on her nightstand, catching moonlight through their small window, holding secrets that would either heal old wounds or deepen them forever. Maya arrived at First National Bank the next morning with Jake, both of them nervous and uncertain. The bank manager, Mrs. Rodriguez, led them to the safety deposit box vault after verifying Maya's identification and the key. "Your grandmother was a regular customer for over 20 years, Mrs. Rodriguez said as they walked through the secure hallway. "Very private, very particular. She came in every few months, always alone." Box 247 was larger than Maya had expected. When the bank manager left them alone in the small viewing room, Maya inserted the key with trembling hands. Inside, she found a thick manila folder, several smaller envelopes, and a wooden box similar to her grandmother's jewelry chest. She opened the folder first and gasped. The folder contained dozens of newspaper clippings, all featuring Maya's artwork. Reviews from her gallery showings, photos from community art fairs. Even a small article about her volunteering to teach art classes at the local community center. Each clipping was carefully dated and preserved in plastic sleeves. "Maya," Jake breathed, reading over her shoulder. She kept everything. There were clippings. Maya had never seen reviews from galleries in other cities where her work had been displayed, mentions in art blogs. Even a photo from their wedding that had appeared in the local newspaper's society section. Her grandmother had been following her career and life from a distance, documenting every achievement. Maya opened the first envelope and found photographs, dozens of them. Pictures of Maya as a child, learning to paint at her grandmother's kitchen table. Photos of high school art shows where Eleanor had stood in the back, unnoticed by Maya, beaming with pride. Even recent photos, taken from a distance, of Maya and Jake working together on a community mural project. "She was watching me," Maya whispered, tears streaming down her face. All this time, she was watching. The second envelope contained receipts and bank statements. Maya's hands shook as she realized what she was seeing. Her grandmother had been anonymously purchasing Maya's artwork for years. Every time Maya had sold a piece through an online gallery or local shop, wondering who the mysterious buyer was, it had been Eleanor. But there was more. Receipt after receipt showed Eleanor purchasing art supplies and having them delivered to Maya's apartment. The expensive paints Maya had assumed were promotional samples. The premium canvases that had arrived with no return address. The professional easel that had been delivered with a note saying it was a contest prize. All of it had come from her grandmother. The third envelope contained legal documents. A trust fund, established 3 years ago, in Maya's name. The account showed regular deposits totaling over $300,000. Money from the artwork Eleanor had secretly purchased, plus additional funds Eleanor had set aside. "She's been supporting my career this whole time," Maya said, her voice breaking. "Every painting I sold, every supply delivery I thought was luck or coincidence, she was making sure I could keep creating." Jake was quiet, reading through bank statements that showed the extent of Eleanor's hidden support. "Maya, look at this. She was also making anonymous donations to the community center where you teach. She's been funding their entire art program." The wooden box contained one final surprise, a collection of letters Eleanor had written but never sent. Letters addressed to Maya, dated throughout the past 3 years. Maya opened the most recent one, dated just 2 weeks before Eleanor's death. "My dearest Maya, today I bought your painting of the Charleston Harbor at sunset. It hangs in my bedroom, now, where I can see it every morning when I wake. Your talent grows stronger each year, and I am so proud of the artist you have become. I know you think I disapprove of your marriage. But I see how Jake looks at you in the photographs, same way your grandfather looked at me. Love like that is rare and precious, no matter what others may think. I have been a coward, Maya. I was so afraid of what the community would think, so worried about disappointing the family, that I forgot the most important thing. You are my granddaughter, and I love you exactly as you are. I pray that someday I will find the courage to tell you these things in person. Until then, I will continue to support your dreams from the shadows, hoping that my love reaches you even when my words cannot. Your proud Maya sobbed, clutching the letter to her chest. All those years of feeling rejected and abandoned, her grandmother had been watching, supporting, loving her from a distance. There's one more thing, Jake said gently, pointing to the bottom of the box. It was a small velvet pouch containing a key and another address. This key was different holder, more ornate. The address was for a storage unit across town. What do you think? Jake asked. I think, Maya said, wiping her eyes and standing with new determination. I need to see what else my grandmother was hiding. The storage unit was in a secure facility in an older part of Charleston. When Maya opened Unit 47, she found it filled with her artwork, every piece Eleanor had secretly purchased over the years, carefully stored and preserved. Dozens of paintings, drawings, and mixed media pieces that represented Maya's artistic journey from college student to professional artist, but arranged against the back wall were Maya's grandmother's most treasured possessions, photos of her own parents in China, hand-painted silk screens, antique vases, and a large portrait of Maya's grandfather that had always hung in Eleanor's living room. A note was attached to the portrait, for Maya's future home when she is ready to display her heritage alongside her art. These pieces belong with someone who understands that love comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest love requires the greatest sacrifice. Standing surrounded by years of hidden love and support, Maya finally understood her grandmother's impossible position, torn between her deep love for Maya and her fear of community judgment, between her traditional values and her pride in Maya's independent spirit. Eleanor had found a way to love both her granddaughter and her community expectations, even if it meant loving Maya in secret. She had sacrificed public acknowledgement of their relationship to ensure Maya could continue pursuing her dreams without the burden of family financial pressure or the pain of complete rejection. She never stopped loving me, Maya whispered, running her fingers along the frame of a painting she'd created in college. She just loved me the only way she knew how. Maya arrived at Michael's house that evening, the manila folder of evidence tucked under her arm. The Tudor-style home in Charleston's historic district screamed success and respectability, exactly what their grandmother had wanted for all her grandchildren. Michael answered the door, surprised to see her. Maya. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you and Jennifer. About Nai, about the will, about everything. Look, if you're here to contest the will, I'm not here about money, Maya interrupted. I'm here about the truth. Jennifer appeared in the doorway, still wearing her black funeral dress. Maya, I don't think this is appropriate. We're all grieving, are we? Maya pushed past them into the marble-tiled foyer, because I just discovered that our grandmother was grieving for 3 years, grieving a granddaughter she thought she'd lost but never stopped loving. She opened the folder and spread the contents across Michael's expensive coffee table. The newspaper clippings, the photos, the receipts, evidence of years of secret support and love. Michael picked up one of the clippings, frowning. What is this? Proof that Nai never stopped caring about me. She's been following my career, buying my artwork, supporting my dreams, all while pretending to disapprove of my choices. Jennifer examined the bank statements, her lawyer's training kicking in. These show significant purchases. Maya, how much money are we talking about? Over $300,000. She bought every piece I sold, funded the art program where I teach, even made sure I had supplies when I couldn't afford them. Maya's voice grew stronger with each revelation. She was supporting me more than she supported either of you. Michael sank into his leather armchair, the confidence draining from his face, but she never said anything. She acted like you were dead to her, because she was protecting me. Maya's anger finally erupted. She knew that if she publicly supported my marriage and my career, the community would turn on her. She'd lose her standing, her business connections, everything she'd worked for. But she also knew that if she completely cut me off, I might give up on my dreams. Jennifer was reading through the letters, tears streaming down her face. "Listen to this," she said, her voice shaking. She read aloud from one of Eleanor's unsent letters. "Jennifer and Michael have chosen safe paths, and I am proud of their success. But Maya has chosen a brave path, and I am proud of her courage. She will face more challenges than her cousins, but she will also create more beauty in the world." The room fell silent except for the ticking of Michael's grandfather clock. "So she left us the money," Michael said slowly, "but she left you her love." "She left all of us her love," Maya corrected. "But she had to express it differently for each of us." Aunt Susan's voice came from the doorway she'd let herself in with Michael's spare key. A family privilege Maya had never been granted. "What is all this nonsense?" Susan demanded, marching into the room. "Maya, you have some nerve coming here," and she stopped mid-sentence when she saw the evidence spread across the table. "Hello, Aunt Susan," Maya said calmly. "I was just showing Michael and Jennifer how Nai really felt about my betrayal of family loyalty." Susan picked up one of the receipts, her face paling as she recognized Eleanor's handwriting. "This can't be real. It's all real. Every clipping, every purchase, every anonymous donation. Nai was supporting me more actively than she supported anyone else in the family." Maya stood, feeling taller and stronger than she had in years. "The question is, why didn't any of you know about it?" "Because," Jennifer said quietly, "we never asked. We just assumed that because she didn't talk about you, she didn't care about you." "No," Susan said sharply, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "Your grandmother believed in family honor, in tradition, she believed in love," Maya interrupted. "And she found a way to honor both her traditions and her granddaughter's happiness, even when it meant sacrificing her own peace of mind." Michael was still staring at the photographs of Eleanor at Maya's art shows, standing in the background like a proud but hidden guardian. "She went to your exhibitions. All those times she said she was visiting friends or running errands. She was there for every important moment of my life," Maya said. "Just like she was there for yours. The difference is, you got to see her support. Mine had to be invisible." Susan sat down heavily, the fight going out of her. "She never told me. In all our conversations about you, about your choices, she never mentioned any of this. Because, you made it clear that supporting me would be seen as betrayal," Maya said, not unkindly. "Nai chose to protect both of us May from complete rejection, and you from having to choose between your beliefs and her decisions." Jennifer wiped her eyes and looked at her brother. "Michael, we need to make this right." "How?" Michael asked. "How do we make up for 3 years of treating Maya like she didn't exist?" "We start," Maya said, "by acknowledging that family isn't just about following the same path. It's about loving each other enough to support different paths." The room was quiet as they absorbed the weight of Eleanor's secret sacrifice. Grandmother, who had loved all her grandchildren but had to love one of them in silence. "The will," Susan said suddenly. "Maya, you need to contest the will. This evidence shows that Eleanor's true intentions were different from what she wrote." Maya shook her head. "I don't want the money. I want something more valuable than that." "What?" Michael asked. Maya looked around the room at her family, flawed, stubborn, but ultimately capable of love and growth. "I want my family back. And I want to make sure that Nai's grandchildren and great-grandchildren know the truth about love, that it comes in many forms, and the deepest love sometimes requires the greatest sacrifice." Outside, Charleston's evening air was warm with the promise of spring, and Maya felt lighter than she had in years. She had found her grandmother's love, but more importantly, she had found a way to honor both her heritage and her choices. 2 weeks later, Maya stood in Eleanor's empty house, now legally Michael's, but feeling like a shared space for the first time in years. The family had gathered to sort through Eleanor's belongings, but the atmosphere was different now, more inclusive. Jennifer was carefully packing Eleanor's cookbooks, reading aloud from handwritten recipe notes. "Listen to this," she wrote Maya's favorite next to the recipe for pork dumplings. "Even after all these years, she remembered what you liked." Michael emerged from Eleanor's bedroom carrying a framed photo. Maya had never seen a picture of all 3 grandchildren at Maya's high school graduation. Eleanor stood behind them, her hand resting on Maya's shoulder. "She kept this on her nightstand," he said quietly, "right next to the photo of her and grandfather's wedding." Maya took the frame, remembering that day. It had been before the family tensions escalated, when her relationship with Jake was still secret and her future still seemed aligned with family expectations. She knew even then, didn't she? Maya murmured. She could see that I was going to choose differently. Aunt Susan, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since the confrontation, approached carrying Eleanor's jewelry box, the one Maya had inherited. "There's something else," Susan said, her voice softer than Maya had ever heard it. "Something. I need to tell you about your grandmother's last days." Maya looked up, sensing important revelation. "She asked for you," Susan continued, her eyes filling with tears. "In the hospital, during her final week, she kept saying she needed to see Maya, that she had things to say. I told her you were too busy, that it would be too emotional for everyone." The room fell silent. Maya felt Jake's supportive presence behind her, his hand gentle on her shoulder. "I was wrong," Susan whispered. "I was protecting my own comfort, not hers. She died wanting to tell you all the things she'd written in those letters but never sent." Maya felt tears coming, but they weren't tears of anger, they were tears of understanding. "You were protecting the family the way you thought was best." "No." Susan shook her head. "I was protecting myself from having to admit I was wrong about you and Jake. Your grandmother was braver than I was." Jennifer had been quietly examining the trust fund documents Maya had found. "Maya, there's something else you should know. This trust fund, it's not just money Nai set aside. She liquidated some of her own investments to fund it. She sacrificed her own security to make sure you could keep creating." "And look at this," Michael added, holding up a letter addressed to Maya's future children. She was planning for grandchildren she might never meet, making sure they'd know their heritage even if she couldn't be there to teach them. Maya opened the letter, reading her grandmother's careful wishes for future generations. "I hope Maya's children will know that they come from a line of strong women who chose love over convention, and that their grandmother's love reaches across time to embrace them, no matter what path they choose." She was building bridges, Maya realized, not just supporting my present, but making sure there would be a future connection between her values and my family. Jake, who had been quietly observing the family dynamics, finally spoke. "Mrs. Chen," he said to Susan, "I know you had concerns about me marrying Maya. I want you to know that I understand how important her heritage is to her, and to any children we might have." Susan looked at Jack really, looked at him for perhaps the first time. She saw the way he deferred to Maya during important conversations. The way he'd spent the afternoon carefully handling Eleanor's fragile antiques. The way he'd learned to use chopsticks properly and had been quietly studying Mandarin phrases. "You love her very much," Susan said, and it wasn't a question. "More than my own life," Jake replied simply. "Then you understand why it was so hard for Eleanor to choose between her community and her granddaughter. Love makes us do impossible things sometimes." Maya felt a shift in the room, a subtle but significant change in the family dynamic. Her grandmother's secret support had not only revealed Eleanor's true feelings, it had forced everyone to confront their own assumptions and prejudices. "I have a proposal," Maya said, standing in the center of her grandmother's living room. "Instead of just dividing up belongings and going back to our separate lives, what if we honored Nai's real legacy?" "What do you mean?" Michael asked. "She spent 3 years building bridges while pretending they didn't exist. What if we made those bridges visible? What if we created a foundation in her name to support young artists from immigrant families who might face the same choice between heritage and dreams that I did?" Jennifer's lawyer mind immediately began working. "We could use the money from selling this house, combine it with some of the inheritance funds, and I could contribute the art collection she bought," Maya added. "We could auction the pieces to fund the foundation, and I could create new works specifically for fundraising." Michael nodded slowly. "She'd like that, supporting other families facing the same struggles, helping them find a way to honor both tradition and individual dreams." Susan was quiet for a long moment. "There's something else. Eleanor left specific instructions with her attorney about her funeral arrangements. She wanted you to speak at the memorial service." "Maya. She wrote the request 3 months ago but asked that it only be revealed if you showed up to the will reading." "She knew I'd come," Maya said, amazed by her grandmother's faith in their connection. "She knew you loved her, even when you thought she didn't love you back." That evening, as Maya and Jake drove home through Charleston's historic streets, Maya felt a profound sense of completion. She had not only discovered her grandmother's love, she had found a way to honor both her heritage and her chosen life. "Are you okay?" Jake asked, noticing her quiet contemplation. "I'm more than okay," Maya replied, fingering her grandmother's jade bracelet. I finally understand what Nai meant about being brave. She was brave enough to love me in secret when she couldn't love me in public. Now it's my turn to be brave enough to love our whole family out loud. The foundation would be their grandmother's true memorial, a place where tradition and innovation could coexist, where love could be both preserving and transforming. Maya had inherited more than money or belongings. She had inherited the knowledge that love finds a way, even when the path is hidden, and that the greatest gift one generation can give to the next is the freedom to choose their own way while staying connected to their roots. 1 year later, Maya stood before a packed auditorium in the Charleston Cultural Arts Center, preparing to speak at the inaugural Eleanor Chen Foundation Scholarship Ceremony. The foundation had grown beyond their initial dreams, supporting young artists from immigrant families across the Southeast. In the audience, she could see her family, Michael and Jennifer in the front row, Aunt Susan dabbing her eyes with pride, and Jake beaming at her from the side of the stage where he'd been helping coordinate the art auction that would fund the next year's scholarships. My grandmother, Eleanor Chen, believed in impossible love, Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the auditorium. She loved her community and its traditions, but she also loved her granddaughter who chose a different path. For 3 years, she found a way to love both, even when it meant keeping that love secret. Behind her, a large screen displayed the artwork that would be auctioned that evening, pieces from Eleanor's secret collection. Alongside new works Maya had created specifically for the foundation, each painting told part of the story. Heritage and innovation, tradition and transformation, love that builds bridges instead of walls. The Eleanor Chen Foundation exists because we believe that young people shouldn't have to choose between honoring their heritage and following their dreams. They should be supported in finding ways to do both. In the audience, Maya spotted Mrs. Rodriguez from the bank, who had become an unexpected ally in managing the foundation's finances. Next to her sat Tom Chun, no relation, despite the shared name, a 17-year-old photographer whose immigrant parents had been afraid his art career would lead to poverty and cultural disconnection. He was the foundation's first scholarship recipient. Tom, Maya said, gesturing to the young man, would you like to share what you're working on? Tom stood nervously, but spoke with growing confidence. I'm creating a photography series about second-generation immigrants in the American South. The project shows how we keep our parents' traditions alive while creating new ones. The foundation didn't just give me money for equipment, they gave me permission to explore who I am as both a Chinese American and a Southern artist. The applause was enthusiastic, and Maya saw Eleanor's dream being realized, young people finding ways to honor their heritage while pursuing their individual paths. After the ceremony, the family gathered at Michael's house for dinner, but this time, Maya and Jake were not sitting separately or feeling like outsiders. Jennifer's children called Maya Aunt Maya and proudly showed her their own artwork. Created in the community classes the foundation now sponsored. Nai would be so proud, Jennifer said, watching her 8-year-old daughter demonstrate the brush painting techniques Maya had taught her. She is proud, Susan corrected gently. I can feel her presence in all of this. Susan had changed the most over the past year. She'd begun volunteering at the community center where Maya taught, and she'd surprised everyone by enrolling in Jake's basic carpentry class, an effort to understand the practical skills he brought to their family. I have an announcement, Michael said, standing with his wine glass raised. Sarah and I have decided to donate Eleanor's house to the foundation. It will become the permanent headquarters and artist studios. Maya gasped. Eleanor's house, the place where she'd felt both welcomed and rejected, would become a home for young artists finding their own balance between heritage and ambition. There's more, Jennifer added with a smile. The city has agreed to designate it as a historic arts center. Eleanor's import business will be preserved as a cultural museum, showing how immigrants have contributed to Charleston's economic and artistic community. Jake squeezed Maya's hand under the table. What do you think? I think, Maya said, looking around at her family, that Nai finally gets to have everything she wanted, her traditions honored, her family united, and her granddaughter's dreams supported. Later that evening, Maya and Jake walked through Eleanor's house, now empty of personal belongings but full of possibilities. Maya could envision artist studios in the bedrooms, gallery space in the living room, and a library of cultural resources. In Eleanor's former office, are you sure about this? Jake asked as they stood in the kitchen where Maya had learned to make dumplings as a child. It's a big commitment, running a foundation and arts center. I'm sure, Maya replied, touching the jade bracelet she now wore every day. This is how I honor both my heritage and my choices. This is how I love the way Nai taught me by making room for everyone, even when it's complicated. In the master bedroom, Maya found something the family had missed during their sorting, a small envelope tucked behind Eleanor's mirror. Addressed simply to the future, inside was a final note from her grandmother. To whoever finds this, I hope that by the time you read this, my family has learned what I took too long to understand, that love is not about controlling the people we care about, but about supporting them as they become who they're meant to be. Maya chose love over convention, and she was right. I chose secrecy over courage, and I was wrong. But perhaps my mistakes can become part of a better story, one where families learn to grow without breaking, where traditions evolve without disappearing. If you are reading this in a house full of young artists, then you will know that love found a way. With hope for all the futures I will not see. Eleanor Chen. Maya felt tears streaming down her face, but they were tears of joy. Her grandmother had not only provided for Maya's present, she had imagined a future where their story could help other families navigate the same difficult choices. What does it say? Jake asked gently. Maya showed him the note, and they read it together in the room where Eleanor had spent her final years loving Maya from a distance. She really did think of everything, Jake marveled. As they locked the house that night, Maya took one last look at the place where she had learned the most important lesson of her life. That love is not always visible, but it is always present. Sometimes it builds openly, and sometimes it builds in secret. But it always builds. The Eleanor Chen Foundation would ensure that future generations of young artists would never have to choose between love and dreams, between heritage and innovation. They would know, from the very beginning, that the greatest love makes room for all possibilities. Maya drove home through Charleston's historic streets, past the Battery where she and Jake had been married 3 years ago, past the community center where she taught children to see beauty in everyday moments, past the gallery where her latest exhibition celebrated the complex beauty of multicultural Southern life. At home, she sat at her easel and began for a commission or a gallery, but for the pure joy of creating. The image that emerged was of hands building a bridge, with traditional Chinese gardens on one side and Southern live oaks on the other, and figures of all ages walking freely between both worlds. It was her grandmother's vision made visible. Love that builds bridges instead of walls. Traditions that evolve instead of calcify. And families that grow stronger by embracing rather than rejecting the dreams of each generation. Maya signed the painting for Nai, who taught me that the greatest inheritance is love without conditions. And knew that somewhere, her stubborn grandmother was finally at peace.